In the early 70s, Dr. Moody, then a philosophy professor trained at the University of Virginia, began to explore the stories of people who had almost died and crossed the line into a heavenly realm. These stories have been told throughout human history, but Dr. Moody was the first to dissect them and discover their similarities. He called them near-death experiences. When he wrote about these in a book, Life After Life, the field of near-death studies began. I have written 4 books with Raymond. I even helped him move into his home here in rural Alabama, so I felt very comfortable interviewing him in his living room. But even as well as I know Raymond, I was surprised by some of his answers. You've had your own near-death experience. And based on those two things, the fact that you've heard all of these stories and you have your own story to tell, what do you think happens when we die?
What I think happens when we die is that we enter into another state of existence or another state of consciousness that is so extraordinarily different from the spatial and temporal frame of reality in which we exist in the physical world, that the language we have is not yet adequate to describe this other state of existence or consciousness.
When we leave our mortal body, how do we leave it? What do we look like?
People say that in the realm of existence they enter into upon the point of death, that there's no such thing as physicality as we experience in it in this realm. It's not that they have a physical body. It's rather that they have some other sort of vehicle which they find it very difficult to describe, but that it does have a form, that it carries a personality, but that it's just entirely impossible to describe it in terms of or analogously to the kind of body that we have. I've heard it characterized as a spiritual body, for example. That's a term that I hear from a lot of people.
So when they come back, they're changed, they're transformed.
There are a number of transformations we see with people who come back from near-death experiences. The most prominent one is that whatever they had been chasing before, whether knowledge or fame or power or money or any of these other things, that when they come back, they say that the most important thing we can do while we're alive is to learn how to love.
How has this knowledge affected your life?
The most powerful one to me has been that it really has convinced me of the importance of love. And I try in every day to be loving to people. I genuinely do try in my day-to-day interactions with people that I try to keep in mind that I will be seeing this again and that I will be seeing this event not from the way I'm seeing it now through these eyes, but that I will be seeing this event through the eyes of the people with whom I've interacted. What I can honestly tell you from the bottom of my heart is that I accept that there is a God and I have a relationship with God and I talk with Him all the time. What I honestly don't know yet from the rational point of view is whether life after death is in His plan or not. And it may well be, if you think about it, that God has something in mind for us that is even more remarkable than what we might call a life after death. In other words, I love God, I have a trusting relationship with God. He hasn't told me anything yet about an afterlife. I'm just going to have to wait and see. Your death experiences. Right. Because what the physiologists tell us, who say that these experiences are hallucinatory, is that as the person is dying, the oxygen supply to their brain is lowered, and hence they have these hallucinatory effects. But if that's true, why would the bystanders have the same kind of experience?
Sure, well, why would they?
That's very difficult to explain.
Yeah.
And I think that once these findings come out and are thoroughly understood by the public, we're going to be into an entirely new dimension of discussing near-death experiences, because that old standby that, oh, this is just hallucinations caused by brain damage, that's out the window with these empathic death experiences.
Now, if you don't mind me saying this, you and your family had a shared death experience at the bedside of your mother.
I did indeed. In 1994, when my mother was dying, my wife and I and my sisters and one of my brother-in-laws were there, and all had astonishing experiences at the moment my mother died.
I think it's one of the most exciting fields to study.
Oh yes, Paul.
The study of afterlife studies, I think this is one of the most exciting.
Paul, this is the new frontier of knowledge, because now we have not only this awareness that these near-death experiences are not confined to the people who almost die, but kind of leak out by whatever unknown means to the people standing around. And it is a very paradoxical and astonishing thing to wonder what is going on here.
Men love to wonder, said Ralph Waldo Emerson, and that is the seed of science. I am reminded of that quote whenever I am with Raymond Moody. For half of his life and counting, the good doctor has pursued the big question of religion, science, and philosophy. What happens when we die? But there are people out there, millions of them, of all races, creeds, colors, and religion, who don't need a scientific answer. They know from experience.
Hello, my delicious co-creators. Lilou here on the Juicy Living Tour here in France, south of France, in Marseille, because there is a big congress here happening. A lot of people are going to meet tomorrow and speak about the near-death experiences. I'm next to Dr. Raymond Moody, that you probably most likely have recognized. Hello, Raymond.
Hello, and it's good to see you again.
Good to see you too. Not too jet-lagged?
I'm jet-lagged, but I'm happy.
So this is quite extraordinary. Another of those beautiful meetings here happening in south of France. Over 1,200 people are coming.
Yeah, wonderful. Good.
It's so delicious to see, first of all, to be sitting next to you, and then you came all the way from the United States. You are the kind of father of the NDEs, because you wrote many years ago. Which year, the Life After Life?
It was published in 1975, but you know, as I appreciate the idea that I'm the founder of this, but at the same time, in reality, the founder of this, I think, was Plato and the other ancient Greek philosophers who were fascinated by these stories of people who were believed dead but who came back. So this was one of the foundations of Western thought. So I think the reason why my book attracted all that attention in 1975 was that by that time there were so many people who had been through this because of the development of cardiopulmonary resuscitation technology, but certainly it was a topic that was explored even by the earliest Western philosophers, and I think for that reason it's a huge mystery. I think this is one of the most important questions that we human beings face, is the question of what these near-death experiences mean. Yeah, I had a long process of coming to terms with this, because I did not grow up in a religious family, and so the idea of an afterlife to me was not very rational, and so, as I said, I got interested in these experiences because of their connection to the ancient Greeks, and then realized pretty quickly that in 1965 that they happened to people today too. So since that time I've had the opportunity to talk with thousands of people from all over the world who've been through this. I think eventually we'll have to wake up to the fact that this is something that is real. It's only in recent years that I myself have come to terms with that, where I realize that this is something real. All of the explanations, for example, in terms of this being the hallucinatory byproduct of a cutoff of the oxygen flow to the brain, well, that's not at all plausible, because we know that the identical experience happens to people at the bedside of the dying who are not ill or injured, and yet they have these same things of leaving their body and accompanying their dying loved ones partway toward this light, or seeing the room filled with light, or perceiving the spirits of the dying person's relatives or friends coming as though to greet them. I think we're going to reach a point where people will have to sort of give up trying to think their way to some other explanation and just admit, as I have admitted to myself in the last 3 or 4 years, that this is apparently a temporary visit to another dimension of reality.
So it took you that long?
It did, because I think I am not religious in my temperament, and this was a hard thing for me to admit. My primary interests professionally are ancient Greek philosophy, logic, and the philosophy of language. But when my book on near-death experiences became popular, then that's what people want to hear from me or to talk about. But
so you're kind of thrown in there.
Yeah, and it was not necessarily what I would have wished for my career to turn out to be, and it's still. But things have happened. For example, I know of a man who had a very profound near-death experience some years ago when he was essentially killed in an automobile accident. I mean, medically it doesn't make any sense that this man lived. He lost both of his legs in this accident, and the injuries were so terrible that it's a miracle that he survived. And in this wreck, his wife was killed instantly, and one of his children. So he told me about this experience, and at my suggestion, he wrote it up. And so he wrote his book, and he sent me a copy of it, which was very good. And then a few days later, he called me and he said that in looking through his own book, he realized that he had mentioned the name of the trauma surgeon, who's a very eminent trauma surgeon, a very brilliant man. And he realized that he had mentioned the name of the doctor in the book, so he felt that it would be impolite for the doctor to suddenly pick up a book if he happened to see it in which he was mentioned. So just as a courtesy, he telephoned his doctor and invited him to lunch. And when he had not told the doctor before about his experience, but at the lunch he said, I wanted to tell you about this experience that I had, that I wrote about. And at that point he said the doctor became very solemn and serious and said, well, I haven't told anybody this, but that night that you came into the hospital, I knew you weren't going to die because the operating room opened into another dimension, and I talked to your wife who had been killed in the accident. And my point here is there are other such cases as well, but that how do you explain that? Because it turns out that the best and happiest policy apparently is to try to live a loving life and to be kind to others, because at the end of this, whatever this is, all of the actions you've ever done you see again, but this time you see them not through the eyes you had when you did them, but rather you see them through the eyes of the people with whom you've interacted. So it makes sense to say that the happiest life is to learn to love, because if you're mean to other people, then at the end of your life you're going to experience the hurt that you brought about in those people's lives. So.
And thank you for taking the time to do this.
It was great to see you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.